Moscow. Boris Johnson confronted Russia on Friday over attempts to meddle in British elections as his Moscow visit descended into a slanging match. The Foreign Secretary said Russia tried to derail British democracy, prompting Sergei Lavrov, his counterpart, to accuse him of making up allegations of interference in Brexit. British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson told his Russian counterpart there was abundant evidence of Moscow meddling in foreign elections. The UN Security Council unanimously imposed new sanctions on North Korea for its intercontinental ballistic missile test last November. Three sisters sold to IS fighters for as little as $4 have been reunited with their family after 3 years. The cryptocurrency plunged below $13,000 after losing around a third of its value in just 5 days. The cryptocurrency plunged below $13,000 after losing around a third of its value in just 5 days. Pilots at low-cost Irish airline Ryanair have held a 4-hour walkout, 1 week after the carrier gave up its long-held opposition to recognising unions. British households turned increasingly cautious in the 3 months to September as they raised their spending at the slowest annual pace since 2012. Bodycam captures the rescue of a Labrador from a frozen river in Northumberland, England. British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson told his Russian counterpart there was abundant evidence of Moscow meddling in foreign elections. The exchanges, played out in front of journalists and diplomats, saw the men accuse each other of dishonesty. As Mr. Lavrov denied any undermining of Britain's democratic processes by computer hacking, Mr. Johnson interrupted, saying none of the attempts had been successful and pointedly referred to Russian interference in elections around the world. Mr. Johnson refused to answer when asked if he trusted Mr. Lavrov, despite the Russian minister saying he trusted the Foreign Secretary. Mr. Johnson later joked that he had handed his coat and hat to Mr. Lavrov in a show of trust and affection. There was nothing in the pockets, Mr. Lavrov said, prompting Mr. Johnson to reply in surprise, "You've checked. How do you know?" The meeting was an attempt to break the deadlock between the two states before talks on North Korea and Syria. But tensions rose after Mr. Johnson said ahead of the visit that the UK was ready and able to respond to Russian aggression at any moment. Get the latest news and updates emailed straight to your inbox. By submitting your email you are agreeing to Fairfax Media's terms and conditions and privacy policy. Mr. Lavrov said, "Our relations are at a low level, and not because of our side." He added, "You prefer to talk about the reasons publicly. Whereas we would prefer to talk about our reasons not through the microphone but directly." The row was reignited when Mr. Lavrov claimed Mr. Johnson had deliberately contradicted him in a bid to protect his reputation with the British media, prompting the UK Foreign Secretary to hit back, "Sergei, it's your reputation I am worried about." He added, "Russian attempts to interfere in our referendums and elections, whatever they might be, have not been successful. Had they been successful," he said, "that would have been an entirely different matter."